All right, you sick fucks. Welcome back to the deep dive. We're going to rip into this messed up world. Atwood cooked up The Handmaid's Tale, got all our intel right here, articles, think pieces, even some batshit crazy forum threads. So consider this your crash course on Gilead 101.
Fasten your seatbelts, folks, because we're diving deep into some seriously fucked up territory.
For those who haven't had the pleasure, The Handmaid's Tale is this dystopian shithole where the U.S. of A. gets flipped on its head and turned into Gilead. Basically a theocracy run by power-hungry, Bible-thumping asshats obsessed with breeding. Think The Scarlet Letter meets 1984 on a bad acid trip.
The show's premise revolves around a global fertility crisis. Gilead exploits this crisis to seize power and establish a totalitarian regime. They blame environmental pollution and STDs for decimating birth rates, using that fear and desperation to justify their draconian measures.
So it's like, oops, we fucked up the planet, time to enslave fertile women and turn them into baby factories. Makes total sense, right?
Well, this fictional scenario does tap into some real-world anxieties. Declining birth rates are a growing concern in many developed countries. And the impact of environmental damage on human health is undeniable.
Okay, let's cut the crap and get down to brass tacks. How the hell did these Gilead clowns manage to pull this off? Did they just roll in with tanks and Bibles? Or was it a slower, more insidious takeover?
The show depicts a gradual erosion of rights, fueled by a perfect storm of social unrest, economic instability, and resurgence of religious extremism. Gilead, with its promise of order and security, was able to exploit these vulnerabilities and seize control through a combination of propaganda, targeted violence, and a carefully orchestrated coup.
Sneaky motherfuckers. So once they're in charge, they basically create this fucked up caste system, right? It's like a color-coded guide to oppression where everyone knows their place and who to screw over.
Exactly. Gilead's social hierarchy is meticulously structured and visually enforced through a color-coded dress code. Handmaids, the fertile women forced into sexual servitude, wear red. The wives, the commander's barren spouses, wear blue, symbolizing their supposed purity and domesticity. Marthas, the domestic servants, wear green, signifying their subservient role. Each color strips individuals of their identity and reinforces their place in the hierarchy.
And let's not forget the ants, those sadistic bitches who keep the handmaids in line with a healthy dose of fear and twisted biblical interpretations. They're like the warden from Shawshank Redemption, but with bonnets and cattle trods.
The ants play a crucial role in enforcing Gilead's ideology and maintaining control over the handmaids. Aunt Lydia, in particular, is a complex and chilling character. She embodies Gilead's twisted morality, justifying her brutality as a necessary means to achieve a greater good.
Yeah, well, her greater good can kiss my ass. It's all just a bunch of bullshit to keep these women subjugated and terrified. Now let's talk about our main girl, June Osborne, a.k.a. Offred. She's this badass handmaid who's fighting tooth and nail to survive this nightmare and find her stolen daughter, Hannah.
The name Offred itself is significant. It literally means of Fred, highlighting her status as the property of her commander, Fred Waterford. It's a stark reminder of how Gilead strips women of their individuality and reduces them to their reproductive function.
It's dehumanizing as fuck. And speaking of Fred, that dude is a real piece of work. He's one of the architects of Gilead. But even he seems to have moments where he questions a monstrous system he helped create.
Fred Waterford, along with his wife Serena Joy, represents the hypocrisy at the heart of Gilead. They were instrumental in establishing this oppressive regime, believing it would restore order and traditional values. But they find themselves increasingly disillusioned and trapped by the very system they helped build.
Yeah, especially Serena. She's this former conservative pundit who is all about family values and shit. But now she can't even read a goddamn book or leave the house without permission. Talk about karma biting you in the ass.
Serena Joy's journey is a tragic illustration of how even those who believe they will benefit from oppressive systems can become victims of their own creation. She represents the complexities of power and complicity as she grapples with the consequences of her choices and the suffocating reality of life in Gilead.
All right, let's get into the nitty-gritty of this fucked up system. Every month, June, along with all the other handmaids, has to go through this horrific ritual called the ceremony.
The ceremony is essentially ritualized rape, designed to impregnate the handmaids and bolster Gilead's dwindling population. It's a chilling example of how Gilead twists religious beliefs and traditional rituals to justify violence against women and control their bodies.
And if a handmaid gets uppity or refuses to play along, they get a one-way ticket to the wall, right? It's like Gilead's version of a public execution where they hang these unwomen as a warning to anyone who dares to step out of line.
The wall is a symbol of Gilead's brutality and its absolute control over life and death. It serves as a constant reminder of the consequences of disobedience and reinforces the climate of fear that permeates Gilead society.
It's fucked up beyond belief. But let's be real. It's not just the handmaids who are suffering in this shithole. Everyone is trapped in this web of paranoia and control, even the commanders and wives who supposedly benefit from the system.
That's a crucial point. Gilead's system of surveillance and repression extends to all levels of society. The Gilead's secret police force are everywhere monitoring citizens for any sign of dissent or deviation from the prescribed norms. This creates a climate of fear and mistrust where neighbors turn on each other and no one feels safe.
So basically, it's a giant clusterfuck of paranoia, religious fanaticism, and state-sanctioned rape. Sounds like a real blast.
Not exactly a utopian paradise, that's for sure. But it's precisely this horrifying reality that makes The Handmaid's Tale so compelling and thought-provoking. It forces us to confront the fragility of our own freedoms and the potential consequences of unchecked extremism and authoritarianism.
Damn right. But amidst all this bleakness, there's still a glimmer of hope, right? I mean, there are people fighting back, trying to bring this whole fucked up system down.
Absolutely. The human spirit is incredibly resilient even in the face of unimaginable oppression.
And that brings us to May Day, the underground resistance movement that operates in the shadows, risking everything to undermine Gilead and fight for freedom.
They're like the Rebel Alliance, but with more bonnets and way less cool spaceships.
Yeah.
We're going to get into the nitty-gritty of May Day and their badassery in the next part. But for now, let's take a closer look at the psychological manipulation that keeps Gilead running. How do they get people to buy into this bullshit? What makes someone like Aunt Lydia turn into a power-hungry sadist? That's a fascinating question, and one that gets to the heart of how totalitarian regimes maintain control. It's not just about brute force, it's about manipulating people's beliefs, fears, and desires. We'll delve deeper into the psychology of Gilead and the motivations of its key players in the next part. So grab another beer and we'll be right back to dissect the inner workings of this dystopian nightmare. Welcome back to our deep dive into the twisted minds behind Gilead. We've seen the horrors they inflict, but now let's dissect how they manage to manipulate and control an entire goddamn society.
Right, because it's not like these fuckers just showed up one day with whips and bonnets. And everyone was like, sure, sign me up for this dystopian clusterfuck. They had to lay the groundwork, poison the well, and make this whole fucked up system seem palatable, if not downright appealing to some.
Precisely. Gilead is a masterclass in psychological manipulation. They exploit existing social anxieties, economic disparities, and religious fervor to create a climate of fear and uncertainty. Then they offer themselves as the solution, the only path to order and salvation.
It's like a cold right. Promise them paradise, strip away their individuality, and then beat them into submission with a Bible.
There are definitely parallels to cult tactics. Gilead uses propaganda indoctrination and social isolation to break down individuals and mold them into obedient citizens. Language itself is weaponized, with words like freedom and love redefined to fit Gilead's twisted ideology.
And they're goddamn good at it, too. Look at Aunt Lydia. She's a prime example of how they take a seemingly ordinary woman and turn her into a power-hungry sadist.
Aunt Lydia is a fascinating and terrifying example of how Gilead manipulates individuals into becoming complicit in their own oppression. She embodies the complexities of faith and fanaticism, justifying her cruelty as a form of love and a necessary means to achieve a greater good.
Yeah, well, her love is about as appealing as a rusty chainsaw enema. But let's not give Lydia all the credit. The commanders are just as fucked up in their own way. They're the ones calling the shots, orchestrating this whole twisted system.
The commanders represent the patriarchal power structure that Gilead reinforces. They hold all the political and social authority, justifying their dominance through twisted interpretations of scripture and a belief in their inherent superiority.
But even they're not immune to Gilead's mind games, right? They're constantly being watched, judged, and pressured to conform.
Absolutely. Gilead's system of surveillance and control extends to everyone, even those in positions of power. The Gilead's secret police are everywhere, watching for any sign of dissent or deviation from the prescribed norms.
It's like living in a goddamn panopticon where everyone is a prisoner, and every interaction is fraught with suspicion. No wonder everyone's so fucked up. But let's talk about the wives for a second. They're not exactly chained to the wall, but they're still pretty miserable, right?
The wives are a study in internalized oppression. They're complicit in the system because it offers them a semblance of power and status. They're promised a life of comfort and privilege as long as they uphold Gilead's values and turn a blind eye to the suffering of others.
Yeah. But that comfort comes at a pretty steep price. They're basically prisoners in gilded cages, stripped of their autonomy and forced to participate in a system that devalues and dehumanizes them.
The wives represent the insidious nature of patriarchal power, how it can co-opt women into upholding the very structures that oppress them.
And let's not forget Serena Joy. She's like the poster child for bitter, resentful housewives everywhere. She helped build this goddamn cage, and now she's pissed off that she can't even open the door.
Serena Joy is a complex and tragic figure. She represents the dangers of unchecked ambition and the seductive allure of power even when it comes at the expense of others. Her journey highlights the internal conflict between upholding a system that benefits her socially, while grappling with the moral consequences of her complicity.
It's like she sold her soul to the devil, and now she's whining because the payment sucks. But here's the thing that blows my mind. Even in this hellhole, there are people who genuinely believe in Gilead's bullshit. They buy into the propaganda, the religious rhetoric, the whole 9 yards. What the fuck is wrong with these people?
It's a testament to the power of indoctrination and the human capacity for self-deception. Gilead preys on people's fears and insecurities, offering a simplistic worldview that promises order and meaning. They manipulate scripture, twist history, and control information to reinforce their narrative and silence any dissenting voices.
It's like they've created a goddamn echo chamber where everyone is just regurgitating the same bullshit, afraid to think for themselves.
Fear is a powerful tool of control. Gilead cultivates a climate of fear and suspicion, where anyone who questions the regime is branded a traitor or a threat to the social order.
And let's be real, they're not afraid to get their hands dirty. They'll beat you, torture you, hang you on the goddamn wall if you step out of line.
Violence is an integral part of Gilead's control mechanism. It serves as a constant reminder of the consequences of disobedience and reinforces the regime's absolute power.
So it's a fucked up combination of psychological manipulation, religious indoctrination, and good old-fashioned brutality.
Precisely. And it's this multifaceted approach that makes Gilead such a chillingly effective dystopian regime.
All right, so we've got the puppet masters pulling the strings, and the brainwashed masses doing their bidding. But what about the people who see through the bullshit, the ones who refuse to play along? Where do they fit into this messed up equation?
That's where the resistance comes in. Even in the darkest of times, the human spirit finds a way to resist oppression and fight for freedom. And that brings us to Mayday, the underground network of rebels risking their lives to undermine Gilead and bring about its downfall.
All right, let's dive into the world of these badass rebels. They're our only hope in this dystopian shitstorm. All right, motherfuckers, let's talk about the real heroes of this shit show, the resistance. These brave bastards are risking their necks to fight Gilead's tyranny, operating in the shadows like goddamn ninjas.
Mayday is a decentralized network of individuals from all walks of life. We see former professors, handmaids, even disillusioned members of Gilead itself working together to disrupt the regime. They utilize clandestine meetings, coded messages, and even exploit remnants of technology to coordinate their efforts.
Wait, technology? I thought those Gilead pricks banned all that shit. No internet, no cell phones, no way to connect with the outside world. How the hell are they managing to pull this off?
Gilead may control the flow of information, but they can't completely eradicate it. Mayday operatives utilize hidden communication channels, smuggled devices, and even exploit vulnerabilities in Gilead's own surveillance systems to stay connected.
So it's like a digital cat and mouse game. These guys are basically hackers and tech wizards using their skills to fight back against a regime that wants to drag us back to the Dark Ages.
It's a testament to the ingenuity and adaptability of the human spirit. Even in the face of overwhelming technological control, people find ways to resist and reclaim their agency.
Okay, so we know they're using their brains to outsmart Gilead, but what about the actual resistance activities? Are we talking about planting bombs, assassinating commanders, or more subtle forms of rebellion?
Mayday operates on multiple levels. They engage in small acts of sabotage, disrupting Gilead's supply chains, spreading dissent through coded messages, and even orchestrating daring rescue missions to smuggle people out of Gilead.
So they're like a goddamn Hydra with multiple heads striking at Gilead from all angles. But let's be real, this shit is dangerous as fuck. One wrong move and they end up on the wall, or worse.
The risks are immense. Capture means torture, imprisonment, or even death. Yet these individuals persevere, driven by a deep sense of justice, a belief that Gilead's reign of terror must end.
They're the goddamn heart and soul of this story, a beacon of hope in this dystopian nightmare. But what about the folks who managed to escape Gilead's clutches? Are they truly free, or are they forever haunted by the trauma they endured?
The road to recovery is long and arduous. Many survivors grapple with PTSD, guilt, and a sense of displacement. They've lost their homes. Families and identities rebuilding their lives is a daunting task fraught with challenges.
It's like they've been through a war, which in a way they've seen the darkest depths of humanity. The cruelty that humans are capable of inflicting on one another.
The psychological scars of Gilead run deep. Emily, for instance, struggles with rage and a thirst for revenge even after finding safety in Canada. Moira, despite her outward strength, carries a heavy burden of guilt and loss for those she couldn't save.
It's a stark reminder that freedom is not just about breaking free from physical chains. It's about healing those invisible wounds, confronting the trauma that lingers long after the chains have been broken.
The show highlights the importance of empathy and understanding in supporting survivors of trauma. Healing is a process, not a destination, and it requires a compassionate and supportive environment.
Damn right. But let's circle back to something we touched on earlier, the whole religion angle, because let's be real, those Gilead fuckers are twisting religion to justify their reign of terror. They're using the Bible as a weapon to control and subjugate.
Gilead's interpretation of Scripture is highly selective and distorted, ripped from its context, and weaponized to serve their political agenda. They manipulate religious beliefs to justify their oppressive laws, their brutal punishments, their entire system of control.
It's like they took all the good stuff about love and compassion and flushed it down the goddamn toilet, leaving only the verses about obedience and punishment.
The show raises critical questions about the role of faith in society, the dangers of blind obedience, and the importance of critical thinking when it comes to interpreting religious texts. It's a warning against the dangers of religious extremism and the manipulation of faith for political gain.
We've seen this shit happen in the real world time and time again, fanatics twisting religion to justify their fucked up agendas, whether it's suppressing women's rights, persecuting minorities, or waging wars in the name of God.
The Handmaid's Tale serves as a chilling reminder that the line between faith and fanaticism can be dangerously thin. It's a cautionary tale urging us to be vigilant in defending our freedoms and challenging those who exploit religion for their own twisted purposes.
All right, we've explored the depths of Gilead's depravity, the courage of the resistance, and the enduring strength of the human spirit. So what's the takeaway for our listeners out there living in the real world where, thank fuck, we haven't descended into full-blown dystopian madness?
The Handmaid's Tale is a wake-up call. It reminds us that the fight for freedom and equality is never truly over. We must be vigilant in defending our rights, challenging injustice wherever we see it, and never taking our freedoms for granted.
Damn right, the world is a crazy place and shit can change in the blink of an eye. We need to be aware, engaged, and ready to fight for what we believe in, because if we're not careful, we might just wake up one day and find ourselves living in our own version of Gilead.
It's a sobering thought, but one that we must confront. The Handmaid's Tale is not just a dystopian fantasy. It's a reflection of the darkness that exists within our own society, the potential for tyranny that lurks beneath the surface of our seemingly civilized world.
So stay woke, stay informed, and don't let those fuckers grind you down. And if you see someone wearing a red robe and a white bonnet, run like hell. That's it for this deep dive into The Handmaid's Tale. We'll catch you next time, you magnificent bastards.